When Simran's father told her, be a tiger, it wasn't just a phrase. It was a survival call, a reminder to stand tall, to protect herself, and to refuse invisibility. Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I'm your host, Kieran. That line, be a tiger, comes from Letters to Singapore, a novel by Kelly Kaur. She is a writer, a poet, an educator, a mother, and speaker whose work spans continents and generations. She's born in Singapore. Kelly came to Canada in 1985, earned her education from the University of Calgary, and has been teaching at Mount Royal University since the 90s. Her work captures the immigrant and, that women of color vibe with a rare combination of wit, depth, and my favorite, defiance. Her poem, A Singaporean's Love Affair, was chosen for the Lunar Codex. So what is that? Well, that's like literally having your work travel to the moon in a time capsule. How cool is that? In 2024, Kelly was named one of Canada's top 25 immigrants, and she's been recognized for her contributions to arts, culture, and education. I had the privilege of meeting Kelly at the South Asian Inspiration Awards here in Calgary, where we both received an award. Hers was in arts and culture. And honestly, from the moment I heard about her on stage, I just knew that I was going to have her on the podcast. And look, it happened. Here she is today on Middle Fingers Up. And here's why. Because her book, Letters to Singapore, if you haven't gotten it, please get it. It's an amazing book. It's not just a story about Simran. It's about generations of women who've had to build their own freedom from the inside out. And a lot of you know exactly what I mean when I say that. In today's conversation, we're going to talk about what it means to be a tiger, what freedom looks like when no one prepares you for it, and how immigrant women are rewriting their stories on their own terms. So if I could just kind of set up some context, lately we are hearing so many headlines about international students, how they're robbing the system, how they've driven up housing prices, how crime has increased because of them. And these sound bites erase the truth. They've crafted, they're crafted from this like same white supremacist systems that once, have been told to our own families, that whole we don't belong here. And then they turn this struggle of immigrants into a scandal. And what's missing is the humanity in all of this. And that these students are often working multiple jobs, sending money home, navigating new languages and trauma, trying to be the model minority, all while trying to earn a degree in systems that often are built to exploit them. And so what's equally painful is how some of us within our own communities, immigrants from our communities who came here decades ago, have forgotten what it feels like to survive, to be new, to be othered, to be blamed for everything. And we start echoing sort of these same voices that once silenced us. So when Kelly's line in her book, it really stood out to me was, I'm totally free and I don't know what to do with my freedom. I think about these young students that are here today going through such similar things as a character in the book that she wrote about. They're expected to be grateful. They're also expected to stay quiet. And then they're also expected to fit in and fade into the background. And so I'm really excited to talk to Kelly about this book, about her own experiences that mirror the book. And honestly, what freedom really means when the world still tells you who and what you should be. So here we go. Let's welcome Kelly. Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to begin. So, yes,
So, Kelly, is there anything that you want to add to your introduction when I described who you were with all the hats you wear, or maybe something I missed that you want that's important to share about you?
I I want to share the possibility that I've experienced in my life from first coming and not having a voice to having the voice not only in my books and things that have been published on beer cans, being done, dance on stage, going to the moon. And also, just recently in February and March, one of my bucket lists, I gave two TED Talks at Western University and McMaster. And every time I do any one of these things, it's my journey. It's for me. It's for me to say, you know what? I'm not going to be invisible and I'm not going to be quiet. So I love that. And thank you for the introduction.
I love it. I still remember meeting you at the SIA Awards. Your conversation, your daughter was there, how they described you while you were on stage. All of this just radiated so much strength and grace that honestly drew me in. And so I'm really excited to get into it, get to know you, and pick your brain about your book. So how cool is it to read a book and then be able to talk to the author of the book? You know, all these questions we have. So I'm looking forward to it. So
Yes, I'm going to show my book. There
yes,
you
please
go.
do. Please do. Awesome. And you know what? I always ask my guests to drop their plug at the end, but you showed the book. Why don't you
Yeah.
share where can people find your book?
If you're in Calgary, you can pick it up, say, at Owl's Nest Bookstore. You can actually even order it, and I think they'll even deliver it to you if you're in Calgary. Otherwise, you can get a Kindle version or any of the bookshops in Calgary, even chapters. And worst case, write to me. I'll make sure that you get hold of the book either through the bookshops, bookstores, or through the publisher.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I want to break down. I don't want to give everything away for those that are going to read the book, but I do want to ask and start at the very beginning. I keep saying it's you, but the character's name is Simran. So Simran's father tells her to be a tiger. And I feel like that line, be a tiger, is sort of the heartbeat of your book, Letters to Singapore. For Simran, the character, it kind of becomes her armor, her identity. And so I'd love to ask, where did that image come from for you as a writer? And then what did you imagine it meant for Simran?
I think it's very interesting because I'm a Kaur, which means princess, and we know Sing means lion. So then you have, those the princess is more feminine and she listens. So I like the idea of tiger. And one of the secret things is my father actually used to say that to me. He said,
Yeah.
"Be like a tiger." So I plagiarized his words because it resonated with me. And also, I think that whole image of the power and the pouncing and the possibility. I just love that image for Simran and for anyone who wants to say, what do I do? And the option of choosing your spirit animal. So I think in the novel, Simran, the main protagonist, has so many challenges and she always has to figure out the way forward. And the way forward is to be a tiger or to sit back and do nothing.
Yeah, I love that. That's good imagery too, like just jumping in opportunities, not
Yeah.
having one foot in the door, like let's put both feet in and let's go for it and see what comes. And a lot of the stories she shares in this book, really that's like the bottom line is taking chances and going for it and having to learn as she goes because there's so much at the age of 20 she hadn't experienced it, especially immigrating from Singapore to Calgary at the time. Would you say there have been moments in your own life where you've had to be a tiger?
All the time. I think that when I first came, I had to negotiate my way through life. So obviously, people will ask if Simran is me, if this book is about me. And what I can say as a new writer is that definitely the book has elements of things I know about in my life, about people, about stories I've heard. So, what I did was to do what I know about writing, write about what you know, right?
Mm.
So, I wanted it to be authentic, I wanted it to be real. So, if I have the character of the father, then I've observed many fathers and I've taken bits and pieces and created some reality and some fiction. And that's what I'm enjoying now that I'm getting more confident about writing, about the role of our own lives and the role of fiction in creating what comes out. So, therefore, if you ask me, is that my mom? Is that my sister? Is that my friend? They are all my moms and all my sisters and all our friends. And I'm so glad that I could take bits and pieces and create the story. And at the end, I'm like, holy cow, what happened here? So I'm really glad when people say, I really like the mom. That's like my
Mm.
Italian mom. I'm like, what? Right? So when you write, you don't know the monster or the beauty you create becomes someone else's reality as well. So I'm enjoying that experience.
I think that's so well said and really well played out in the book because there is so many moments, not just with Simran, but the other characters in the book that even I related to. And whether my experience with my mom or my sister or a woman that I know that, suit fit the situation her sister was in, the loss that some of the characters went through. And I thought, oh, this is so I get it. I get it. And then it's really cool because you get to also, as someone reading your words, like not only is there relating to it, but also being able to connect. Okay, where does this fit now for me? Is this where I was? Is this where I am? And I really really appreciated doing my own reflection. I was telling you before we started recording, I took a lot of notes that I was like, I want to circle back to this for myself. I want to circle back to this. So there's this moment when Simran says, I'm totally free and I don't know what to do with my freedom. And it's like this double-edged sword that I think I can imagine coming from Singapore, where she talks about what her life was like in terms of the expectations of her dad and her mother, and not really having that sort of freedom that she's now exposed to on her own. And so, what kind of freedom did you imagine she was confronting emotionally, culturally, or maybe it was something deeper? Like, I'm really curious to hear.
I think it reflects on the different lives of women all around the world. So, for a South Asian woman, a Punjabi, a Sikh woman who came from Singapore in the novel, Simran has come from the arranged marriage situation. And now she has to negotiate her own life. And she grew up in a very strict household where you're not given the way or the roadmap how to do it,
Yeah.
right? Things are decided for you, even your marriage. Things are told to you. You can do this, you cannot do that. So then to come to a country that represents freedom, so to speak, and to have to do that on your own is not as glorious as you may think it would be. It's frightening. You make many mistakes, as Simran makes those mistakes, even the smallest things, like how to talk to a man or how to walk on snow or what to buy, how to buy a coat.
Yeah.
So it becomes a story of an immigrant. And even today, when I wrote that in 1985 to 1988 time frame, I still see that today, where I have my students in my university classes and they say the same things. I'm alone. I don't know where to go. I miss my family. So I think the theme of loneliness and isolation and
Mm.
alienation remains the same for many of us. And then I have my Canadian friends who said, I grew up on the farm. I came from Saskatchewan. I felt the same feelings when I came to Calgary. So then I realized that it was not about South Asian or East Indians, it was about the concept of freedom. And I think people who are born with freedom forget what it means not to have freedom, whereas people who get it have to learn the path that can be wonderful, in the middle, or destructive. So I thought that was really interesting for Simran, the options and opportunities available to her that her mother and her sister did not have. And the contrast is startling at times.
Yeah, that's so well said. What would you say to some of the young women, some of our immigrant mothers, grandmothers, to the women out there that still maybe feel that this freedom that they have is without a map and they're still navigating, figuring it out? What's one thing that you would share with them?
I think it's very challenging, and one has to be careful what one says because that freedom is often confined by their culture and their family situation. So I know many people who are still in that same situation of Simran in 85, where their marriages are arranged for them and they cannot make their own decisions. They have to wear this, do that, go here, and go there. So the easy thing for all of us to say is just walk away, just
Mm,
leave. Why don't you defy? Why do you have to live with your family? Why do you have to listen to them? But that culture and expectations are so ingrained in you that it is part of who you are. And I still see it when I go back to Singapore every year and I see my friends, I see my family, I see my mom, and the things they say are so startling to me because I'm free now. I don't care. I rebelled. And even when they look at me, they say, "My goodness, you're just so tough, aren't you? You're like a man." And I think that's ironic, right? Because it's men that are granted the freedom
mhm.
automatically. So to people who are here, I think they need to, if they read the book, they can see what Simran chose for herself. So they have to carefully choose what is best for them, given the circumstances, and how to be happy and safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it, you talk about sort of these Western views and that whole individualistic approach that we in North America either grow up with or learn to live with. And what I hear you talking about is where the beauty of some of our cultures and some things that immigrants get to hold on to is that collective approach, which is okay, let's talk, let's connect, let's not lose sight of that. And I had so many interesting conversations with friends that would say, "Why are you complaining about this family member?" Right? Like, just never talk to them again. And you're like, no, like that's not how that works. Where they call it being enmeshed, and I don't know. I call it being sort of a collective. When you are part of a community that's had to survive, you have this kind of connection, and I appreciate it. As I get older, I've grown to really, really respect some of those views that we've come with. Now, there's things, of course, we can grow out of and reshape. And I think a lot of women and a lot of people today, the younger generation, is doing just that, which we'll talk about in a sec. But if we can shift, you talk about your students and them even today sharing some of their experiences, which Simran in 85 could relate to. And it's like, here we are in 2025 and we have similarities. Another thing that really hit hard for me was education and colonization. And there's this conversation that goes on in the book about not letting the professor colonize Simran, who's having some struggles and challenges when she hands in her papers and the results that she gets back and what she's being told by these professors. And you're a professor. So what do you think that meant for Simran in her academic journey? And what might that look like for students maybe today in spaces where we're still shaped by those Western ideals?
I think that's very intriguing and challenging because at that time frame, when I wrote the novel, again, these were stories I had gleaned and heard and listened in the corridors of university life. But then when you see what's happening with the Me Too movement, Me Too movement about women being treated the way they were treated happened around that time frame. But then it comes down to the idea of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's patriarchal, it's misogyny to some extent, it's power, power of the university instructor versus the student, and how that can be used. And I think that when the immigrant or a young woman or a man, anyone, is in that situation where they have the professor who can determine the outcome of everything, they have to find a way to navigate their own freedom. And
Mm-hmm.
85 to 88, let me tell you, there were not many options and opportunities. And Simran tried. She went everywhere to get help. And it always came back to be quiet, don't say anything about it. But today, thankfully, I think that is slowly changing. But it's the theme of power and the irony of Simran getting the power because she's getting an education. And the way out of this is education. So I like that contradiction and that tension between the two.
You mentioned power, and so another area where power was sort of highlighted was the writing about like our elders, elder women, and something in there was said about, like the older women making younger women feel subservient. And that was a conversation, Simran, in a letter she was writing to a family member who was experiencing patriarchy at its thickest.
Yes.
And so I think, the conversation in there is like realizing how a lot of our elder women were once bullied by other women, and how patriarchy is so out there, and how quickly women get swept by it and again forget, and now the next generation
Yes.
is coming up and it's like, well, now it's my turn to show you, right? and
Yes.
and and I'm going to out myself. Like I have two boys, and I remember, like, I always wish I can circle back, when you grow and you're like, I wish I can go back and talk to those people when I didn't know then. But I remember telling coworkers when my boys were so little about the kind of mother-in-law I was going to be, because that's sort of the culture I grew up in, and I was going to be a tough mother-in-law. And it took my relationship and my, education, my understanding when my little brother got married, and sort of how much I've learned through from my sister-in-law. I help parent my brother. My sister and I sort of help parent him. So he's like our son. So this was my first sort of practice at what it would be like to be a sub mother-in-law, not to take the role from my mom, but as the older sister. And so much learning about, oh, okay, we got to break some barriers here. And then it made me sort of view how and what kind of space I wanted for my sons should they ever get married. And I just, it hit home, because for my own self, I'm like, yeah, I was caught in that crossfire too. So what do you think, that tension between the generations, like, why do you think it still exists for women, that tension through the generation? And what is the thing we can do to encourage, maybe a PSA here for women, that sometimes, we're so far up, and pardon my French, patriarchy's ass. Like, we get
Yes.
so caught in it, and we feel it, and we encourage it. What's the thing that we could focus on to start to break those cycles? Or for those that are doing it, how can we encourage they continue to honor that?
I couldn't resist in my novel. I had to zoom in on mother-in-laws because, again, growing up, I saw that happening all around me. You have the wonderful mother-in-laws. We don't care about them. We love them. It is the mother-in-laws from hell that really amused me, worried me, and concerned me because I could see the power one woman would have over the other woman, as you said. And I think again, it's tied up to culture. It's
Mm-hmm.
tied up to izzat, right? This is a reputation. This is the way it has to be, especially in a South Asian community or many immigrant communities where the mother figure and the mother-in-law figure now has also the power over the younger version, so to speak.
Mm.
And I think that the way out is very challenging. For me, for Simran, it is to speak up, to say something. And once again, her tool is education. By getting her degrees, she was able to rebel and have a voice. In real life, I think there are many ways that people handle it. I've seen people do it with a smile and a nod, but continue to do what they want anyways. I've seen people fight, scream, and shout and overthrow the regime. And I've seen people just say, I'm never seeing my mother in law ever again. So you have to choose your options, right? For me, I'm just amused because I answer to no one. But when I go back home, I see all these people having to answer, kowtow in uncomfortable ways. And again, there's some amazing mother-in-laws and sister-in-laws and in-laws, but there's some that still expect you to behave according to tradition. So the question is, what do we do about tradition? Do we overthrow the South Asian tradition, or do we keep the respect and the honor and showcase it in a different way to be equals? And I don't think some of the mother-in-laws are ready for that equal status yet, are they?
Yeah, that's so well said. And
No.
you're right, it's a balance. It's not one extreme to the other, because there is a lot of good in the culture as well. And I think that's why people are so afraid to, just zooming in. I think sometimes as a community, we're so afraid to, because we think it's got to be one way or the other. So we're going to lose the whole culture, the language, the mother tongue. And so just keep everything, including all the crap, versus no, 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 we can have a balance and we can outgrow. We're now amongst this younger generation that does this two really powerful words that they utilize is but why. And we didn't grow up with that. I know my mother didn't, my grandmother didn't. And so it's always so empowering to hear the but why. And I was telling a friend the other day, I'm like, I'm in this double-edged sword when you see cycles breaking with your own children. And some of it I'm learning this myself, and then I'm parenting. And so on one hand, I'm so mad when my kids are like, but why? But then on the other hand, I'm like, yes, you should be asking me this,
Yeah.
because, I need to also critically think, why are we asking you to do this weird, wild thing? So if we were to turn some of this into mentorship, and I think that's sort of what we're talking about, is how can women be for women? How would you describe what mentorship would look like for you? What do you want to be mentored by? What kind of mentoring do you want to do? And how can we maybe honor some of that and practice that as women?
In my situation, for me, it became obvious and easy. So I have a daughter. She's 27 years old. So right from the very beginning, I gave her freedom. I didn't have much freedom. Simran didn't have much freedom. And when you don't have it, it becomes attractive. So I thought, let me experiment with this child. I have a son as well, so both of them. But especially, I was curious with my daughter. So I gave her all the freedom she wanted. I said, do what you want. Tell me what you're doing. I will drive you. I will take you. I will listen to you. I will be there. I will meet your friends. Let's collaborate and let's communicate. And luckily for me, that really worked, because I would see my children at 9 or 10 o'clock. They're at home on the weekend. And I say, go out. They say, oh, no, we want to hang out with you. I'm like, I fought for your freedom. Go out and have fun. Look at what Simran, she can't do anything.
Yeah.
No, no. So when you have freedom, you have choices,
Yes.
then it doesn't become attractive to rebel. So mentorship comes from open communication, changing the status quo. I mean, the things I've done, especially with my daughter, allowing her the freedom to be with whomever she wants and to experience and experiment, really worked out, because I'm proud to say she's turned out to be an amazing young woman who can think and argue, can stand for herself, and makes better decisions than I have ever done. I go to her for advice and go, what
Oh,
should I do? And she's like, oh, Mom, let me tell you, I like this, I don't like this. So I think that mentorship comes when power becomes less about status and who has it in their hands, and it becomes a communication pattern. So try that. If you talk to someone older, an older woman, mother-in-law, mother, grandmother, you will feel the resistance immediately. If you say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to marry who I want, and based on their background and experience, they will say yes, or over my dead body, or something in between, right? So that is the experiment that I find is very interesting in immigrant families today as well.
What I hear you saying is building bridges instead of hierarchies.
Yep.
And I think, and you know, your daughter, like I said, I met her. She was at the SIA Awards, and you can, the way you speak about your relationship with her, I saw from her and I heard from her. She's like, my mom's my best friend. You know, like she's like, no, I love going with my mom. We're so close, is what she had said to me. And so I love that. I think you did a wonderful job, and you are learning, figuring it out on your own. And then what a wonderful way now to see an adult who's your child that you're like, okay, I broke some barriers with, and look at where she's at to have this strong relationship with you.
And she can do
Um,
whatever the heck she wants. And it's interesting because I'm very close to my mom in Singapore, but she still has traditional values. But I will tell her, I say, Mom, nobody cares about what you think about how you should dress. Mom, you cannot say things like that. Will you please stop? So we try to communicate, but she's a lovely lady. She listens, but she still has her cultural inculcations that are difficult to remove. But
yeah,
my daughter Tegan, she's a free spirit. And it only took me one generation from my lack of freedom to me being a rebel to her being free. That's how short it was, and I'm grateful for that.
that's a solid point. One generation, like when you put that time and effort in growing and building self-awareness, and I always feel self-awareness is like a superpower. Not
Yeah.
everyone has it, and you have to figure out how to build it. But when you have that, it's such a guiding tool. And look at that, you're absolutely right, one generation, and here we are in terms of what your daughter's capacity is and compared to the work that you had to do. And she'll have her own challenges, but I think the key is giving her the resources in the way that you didn't get to have, and you had to figure out and navigate. And great character building for you, I'm sure.
Yes, it
But
is.
also you had to take the long way to get to some of these milestones, I would imagine.
It is. I think having the autonomy and the freedom and the independence gives you the power, right?
Mm,
Not everyone needs an education. If you don't want one, that's fine. But if you can be guided by that light within you that comes from the knowing of stability and a
yes.
family who's there for you, as opposed to I'm going to marry someone from a different background, religion, caste, and they're going to disown me. Immigrant South Asian, many of us have that extra burden of trying to fit in. And I think when Simran left her comfortable cocoon and came to an uncomfortable, cold country, she had to find where she belonged. And I think that's a constant struggle for some of us, for many of us, for many immigrants, because there's always that sense of where do I fit in? Right? What's the right
Yeah.
thing to do? Who do I make happy?
Yeah.
And it's a choice.
That's the key.
Yeah.
If Simran met an older version of herself, what do you think that conversation would sound like?
I think that the Simran, without giving anything away, just the experiences she's gone through, I think based with her professors, for example. I mean, one choice is to quit and go back,
Yeah.
right? But if she powers on, I don't want to give stories away,
Mm-hmm.
and continues, then that builds courage and determination, right? So in families where you are protected, when you don't have to experience any of that, you're simply, being blown around in the wind. But when you make your own decisions, then I think the younger Simran looking at the older Simran would say, you get to choose choose wisely. And if you don't, it's okay,
Mhm.
because it is from the mistakes that you're going to learn, and you're going to make many mistakes.
By the end of the story, Simran says, like, I listen to no one, I follow my own instinct. That's kind of the message that she's sort of encompassing. As the author, how do you know and how did you know she would be ready to say something like that?
When I was writing the novel, I had many opportunities thanks to my wonderful editor, Lisa Murphy Lamb, who said, we need her. We need her to grow. We need her to we need to show change, get stronger. And I thought, oh my goodness, how the heck do you do that? Right? This was my first novel. And I had a wonderful mentor, Aretha Van Herk, who guided me and said, send me 20 pages every 2 weeks, no matter where I am in the world. And I would send it, and she would say, this is good, or how about this suggestion? So I think having a story arc and deciding how your character is going to grow and having it be realistic. They were all big challenges for me as a writer. So when I put them in, I had to, I think it's the words that the characters say that will show. So we have a young Chinese woman, we have a South Indian woman. They have more freedom than Simran's sister, for example. So how they articulate their present moment will then determine how they will become as they get older, right? So they are the change, they are the generation. I
Mm.
think in the book, the mother will remain the same. I don't think the mother has the capacity, capability, and opportunity to change dramatically. But there are moments where she'll say, oh, okay. When the young women talk back to her, she said, okay,
Yeah,
right? As
yeah,
opposed to, no, you have to listen to me. I know everything.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
well said.
yeah.
Do you think that every woman has a version of that moment where she's like, okay, I'm gonna follow my instinct. I'm not gonna listen to anyone. Where she stops asking for permission?
Yes, I've seen many instances of that, but I've seen more instances where the women have no choice. And that's one thing I think I was curious about. It's like, just leave, not happy, go. Why do you stay? And then when you look at the situation, you realize stay and leave and get what job? $1, $2 at McDonald's in whatever country. Uh, Fight and rebel and go where the society comes on you and punishes you. So I think that that is also a form of freedom. I think freedom can be subversive, right? You
Mm.
can stay and make changes, or for many of us today in Canada, most of us can leave
Mhm.
because there are
Mhm.
sources and resources and places we can go to. So I don't judge anybody anymore. I used to think, no, happy, just leave. What's wrong with you? And now I go, wow, holy cow. Wow, you can't leave. Ooh, what to do? What to do? Right? And for
Yeah.
me, the way out is you can get an education, get an education.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that line of like I listen to no one and like I'm gonna trust my own instinct, that hit hard for me because I'm entering my mid 40s and I'm sort of starting this whole like perimenopause to menopause, and for us women it's the second time in our life where we go through such an extreme hormonal shift. So adolescence, that defiance, puberty first hits. And then in this mid sort of 45 to 60 range, we go through it again, but there's different, there's less grace, there's less understanding, there's a lot of impatience from partners. And I notice, like for as in my mid 40s, like I have privilege. I want to start with that. I know I have privilege. I've been able to follow my voice most of the time. But we're all taught as girls from whatever community we come from in such a young age, like you got to be good. Listen to your
Yes.
mother, listen to the authority, then, be a good sister, daughter, student, employee, mother, wife. And then when we start going through this second act in our life, this hormonal shift, that I think like for me, that defiance is coming out again, like when I was 14, and I'm loving it. And I think part of what I'm loving about it is this is where I'm unraveling that part of my journey of, oh yeah, I have this thing called my gut and my intuition, and I've kind of walked away from it because I've been so focused on taking care of other people and other things that I can come back to me. And some people call it, oh, it's that midlife, like they pin it as you're going through something crazy. And I really do think it's like another chance for a lot of women
Yes.
to come back to themselves and, home or wherever that is. So I just wanted to share that because I felt when I read that line, that's how it resonated for me was, yeah, like saying I listen to no one doesn't mean you're going around saying no to everyone. It just means that sometimes we get to start with ourselves first, and not all the women that have been around us who were our role models had that opportunity. And I think those of us that can find that's that power, that's that privilege, that's that choice that we've been talking about through this episode that I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think what's interesting in my novel Letters to Singapore, I wanted to showcase South Asian voices, because it's not often that we get to hear about someone who is trying to make a new life in Canada, traditional mother, her sister who is in an arranged marriage, her South Indian friend who has more freedom, and her Chinese friend. So these voices are the voices of the women who say yes, no, maybe, how come. And no matter what they do, life has expectations on them, right? They go through the experiences that are challenging. So I think having a voice is important, and how we use it and when we use it becomes so crucial and fun. It's fun, it's scary.
Oh my
And I
gosh,
see
yes.
the new generation, as you say, even your sons, they, no matter what gender you are, you have to find that voice to say, this is who I am. And it takes time. I think you're right. When you're younger and then you get older, then you have children or not, and then you get older, then there comes a point where you're like, you know what? This is who I am. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And that's such a nice feeling, right?
Oh my gosh, it's like liberating because you're
Yeah.
like, well, like, you don't have to try to look right. You can start to be right. So I just wanted to talk a little bit beyond the book. So like your journey, we're talking about Simran, we're talking about the book. But when you first started writing Letters to Singapore, like what story did you think you were writing, and what story do you feel revealed itself along the way?
Great question. And this is for people who want to write and say they cannot write. I'm too young. I'm too old. I don't know anything. I just wrote this book a few years ago, and I had been dying to write. I teach literature. I have my BA, my master's in English, and I'm like, it's easy to write. But I never did it. I had so many rejections. So I gave up, and I thought there's no place for South Asian, East Indian stories about arranged marriages. I mean, nobody cares. So I gave up. So when this opportunity came, and I was under the mentorship of Aretha Van Herk, I had no clue what I was going to do. So my daughter and I brainstormed the night before, and I thought, what about letters? What about letters? And she's like, yeah, great idea. So I just kept repeating it. And then Aretha said, good, send me 20 pages every 2 weeks. And I said, I don't know where to start. She said, write the first letter. And so I wrote the first letter. And the moment I did that, slowly things fell into place. Because when you write a letter, you need an answer.
Yeah.
So write to mom, write to your sister, write to your Chinese friend, write to your South Indian friend. They write back. And then what I love about letters is when I was young, I wanted to read my sister's letters, right? And when one came, I would take the kettle and steam it open and then read her letter, put it back, and I go, oh, you got a letter. So it's that eavesdropping on people's lives that I enjoyed. And the whole idea of people's lives are secrets. So when you are reading the novel, you are reading into the secret lives of people. When we look at each other, I look at you, I'm like, Wonder what letters she has, right? Because in those letters and in those writing, there are glimpses of what our authentic stories are as well, what we see and what we write. So once I got the hang of that, I had a really interesting time writing back and forth. And of course, nobody's interested in I'm happy, you're happy, they're happy. Who wants to read those stories, right? We want conflict. I had to come up with the idea of challenges and women and how are they going to survive. And I knew all the stories from my Singapore people. I grew up in Singapore, so I could start pulling things out so that they were true, they were real.
Yeah.
And these stories are stories about women in cultures and societies that don't give them much freedom at times.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting like how you said like we get to kind of like be a fly on the wall between Simran and these women she's writing to and from, and the conversation Simran's having with one of the women is very different than with the other women and the other. So it's like really authentic to the relationship she has with these people, and I think that was the really one of the wonderful things about it, because you're not reading the same. Simran's a different version of herself with these people. You know, who she is with her sister is going to be different than who she is with her mom. And I think we can all relate to that. How we are with our siblings or our friends is, you know, it's going to be different. And that was really, really nice. And it really carried out so, like, it was so crisp in how that carried out throughout. And I, like, my husband, we were on vacation when I was reading it. And a couple times he looked at me and he's like, "You just want to go back to the room and read your book." I'm like, "Yes, I'm dying to hear what the other person is going to say back to what, you know, this person sent." So it was because I wanted, yeah, it's like you're reading someone's diary almost, right?
Yeah.
And so it was really well done and creative in sharing this young woman's journey. And for you, what has writing this book sort of taught you, maybe about, you know, coming home in some ways, or what it means, what it costs, how it changes with you, all those kinds of things? Like, what is a thing that stands out to you when you think of what did this book teach me?
This book is my other favorite baby. It opened up possibilities again for me. First of all, I'm a writer. Writers don't like saying that or can't say it. So I can say I'm a writer. And I still have my doubts and I still wonder who's going to read it. And then I end up in the book club in England and you know, the 8 British women are talking about books and stories. And I think, what happened when I wrote my little book about Singapore and women and challenges? How the heck did it get to London? And I have another book club coming up next week, and women who want to talk to me about the writing process. And I think that's what we all need,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
all need. So first of all, if you have a book, have a story to write, write. Don't worry about what's going to happen, right? Whatever your story is, it is your inner life unfolding onto the page. And whether it gets published or not, irrelevant. Just write. And the second thing is, because of this book and the fact that I did it, it gave me the courage to then write my children's book, Howdy I'm Sing Harry. And I have a poetry collection coming out next year with the University of Calgary Press. And I send things off and I take part in speeches and presentations, and each thing just is a Lego block of my confidence. And I'm
Yeah.
getting to the point where I'm like, you know what, Kelly, you don't answer to anyone. You can write, you can do this. Rejection is part of the writing world.
Yeah.
Rejection is lonely. But this one book that you wrote touched one person's heart. And that is the beauty and the joy that it brings to me. So I'm so grateful.
Yeah. Any feedback from the book that stands out?
I have, so when I was in London a couple of weeks ago, and we're from different worlds, right? These women who grew up in a different world, different freedom, but they could relate to so many themes. And some of them had children who married South Asian women, for example. And so they were bringing that into play. So it became a connecting connector thing that I didn't even expect. And they were talking about, it's not so different for us women. We expect this and patriarchal expectations. And so the themes become universal.
Yeah.
It's not just about Simran, who came from Singapore to Canada and is trying to survive. And I find that, my friend who said the mother is like my Italian mother, and I read and I cried because I miss my mom. And another one who said, I come from small town and I came to Calgary. I had the same exact experiences as Simran. I'm like, how can you? You're Canadian, you have all the freedom in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a learning experience for me as well, who used to think, us, you, me, and the other. I think
Yeah.
we're so similar in so many ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know people really enjoy, they like the letter experience. They say they
Yeah.
can read it, put it away, come back. And some enjoy just the way the women were interacting. And I tried to put in all the issues that women face, which are the truth. I didn't have to make them up. I just remembered the stories, and I go, that's going in about wealth and about relationships and about mother-in-laws and about fathers and daughters. And I think that's endearing to me and to people who read it. Someone is going to find something that goes, I know what you mean, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
amazing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many elements to it that it makes sense what you're saying, that women from different communities living in different parts of the world would
Yeah.
still find a connection. And I think that's the beauty of arts and culture. Like
Mm.
when as a community, for me, when you were up there receiving the award, I said to my husband, I'm like, so that there is some progression happening as a South Asian community when, first of all, the category is arts and culture. And then,
Right.
second of all, you have the South Asian woman winning this award. And I'm like, this is always for me. When you see arts and culture sort of thriving in your community, as a community, you are also thriving in many ways. And I think as a South Asian community, we've had a lot of wonderful artists, whether it's musical, yourself with writing. We have all these sorts of different avenues that we can connect to that maybe we didn't 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I think that's a lovely part of connection, as you said, is that there's opportunity to have these conversations and relate and understand we're humans. At the end of the day, we are all humans. And if we can start to see that in each other, I think, oh my gosh, we'll get so much further.
Yes. And
Um,
you being on stage and you doing what has never been done before, dialogue and conversations. I mean, who did that? Right. So for you to talk about all these important things too. And I know when you went on stage to receive your award, I'm like, hello, I want to
oh.
know that woman and what she's up to. So very inspiring as well. Thank you.
And then here we are today, right? Having this conversation.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. And
do
more
do
projects to come.
oh yeah, we were having some good brainstorming
Yeah.
earlier. So I'm gonna ask you, as we start to wrap up, I have a couple more things for you. Do you feel like there's a sense of responsibility slash, I mean, the freedom, we've sort of talked about responsibility, being one of very few Singaporean, like born South Asian women that's writing?
I need to write more, and I have to say there are more things that people don't talk about, and sometimes I'm frightened to write about it. Like there's more hidden stuff. So I want to slowly get into it, and fiction. I want to uncover it, but I also want to show the good, wonderful, joyful parts of life
Yeah.
as well. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's intriguing, the responsibility of a writer, fiction, nonfiction, writing poetry. You do let people into your lives, right? Everyone who insists this story, Simran is me. Well, you're wrong, because my story is even more challenging or has more challenges and more secrets. And will I unfold them? I don't know. But Simran managed to do this in this novel, and I, the writer, found this vehicle to share women's stories in a way that I certainly hope and I think was successful in showing different lives. And that's important, right?
It's
Different
so
lives.
important. At the beginning, I had mentioned sort of how our international students are being viewed, treated, received here. And it's like all of them are lumped into this, they're so bad. And that's not the story. Maybe
No,
that's one, or there's part of a story, but
no,
there's a lot of isolation as well that these students are experiencing. And
lonely.
I like, you write a story about a student, like we said, in 1985, and it's 2025. And to flash forward today, there's so many similarities still. And I think, okay, like, what a way to bring out this narrative by humanizing these sort of experiences that are still happening. And if we can relate to the mother and the sister and all these other things, I'm also hoping we can relate to this human aspect of these students that are coming in that are already having all these challenges, and we're treating them like they're the reason our system is so messed up, you
It's
know?
important because the Simran in the novel has to spend Christmas alone in a building. Everything is shut down. There's no food, there's no people, there's no one. So there are many immigrants today who they don't know what, Halloween. People come dressed as demons and come to your house and want candy. I mean, what a shock to the system. Or Christmas or Thanksgiving or eating turkey. I mean, it's so, so alien, and it takes time to adjust. No different than any of us going to Japan and trying to speak. I was in Paris and I didn't understand French, and I felt so alone and so afraid because I didn't know what was happening. I felt a loss of power. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought that's how some immigrants feel in Calgary, in Canada, when they have no access to the language and they don't know the culture, they don't know the customs, and you just look around and you go, help. So that's the powerlessness. And so the power comes from learning, assimilating, choosing, educating, getting out there, reaching out. And that's where you say the immigrants who are here today, hopefully, and I know many universities do have programs to help them, but do we need more? Right? So
Yeah.
stories like these may help people understand the immigrant experience of a student who
Yeah.
comes to Canadian universities.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That's something you and I can maybe circle back to later as
Absolutely.
well.
I just want to
Um,
say
mm,
spider symbolism,
mm.
creation, creativity, and destiny. That is what it symbolizes, and alongside concepts like patience, persistence, and connection.
Oh,
So
look
the
at that.
spider came as a symbol to you.
Wow. I'm sorry, Mr. Spider, I put you in a bowl there, but
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Look at that,
yeah,
hey? I love that symbolism. That's always
that's so cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm letting that register.
Yeah.
And so before we wrap up, this is the part of the show where we ask, what do you want to put your middle fingers up to today? That is the name of our podcast. And middle fingers up to social issues, other issues. This isn't calling out, someone, but it is really about the things, the challenges and the struggles that maybe you want to highlight and put out there. And if there was something out there that you'd want to highlight, what would that thing be that you'd put your middle fingers up to?
I think I would do it for and against the idea of racism and the challenging labels put on immigrants, to say that they come, they take. I think it's a two-way street. I think they come, they give, they have a relationship, they do a beautiful dance, and we need to honor and respect that, right? It's not a constant, why don't you go back to where you come from? And I think it's not as simple as that. It's you're here, I'm here, let's make the best of it. And to understand that when you say things that are insensitive or unfair, to stop and say, let's come to a place of understanding. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's talk. Let's listen to Kiran's podcast and see what people feel, what people think. Because the middle finger is to say, it's not as simple as black, white, immigrant, Canadian, go back, stay. It's a matter of, I'm here and I deserve this beautiful life as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm. That's well said. Very well said. I appreciate that. One more time, if people want to find you, connect with you, you shared where we can get your book, but what about you? Is there a place people can connect with you?
Yes, that'd be great. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Kelly Kaur, and I'm on Instagram, I think Kelly Kaur 3. And if you Google Kelly Kaur, you'll see some of the writing pieces I've done, and I'm at Mount Royal University. So get in touch with me. I would love to hear from you and share your ideas and impressions and expressions and your own writing. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
I love that. And I will also have that written in the show notes for people so that they know where they can get in touch with you. Kelly, I don't want this to end. I want to thank you for this conversation, for your wisdom, for your courage to share Simran's story, to connect so many of us around the world to Simran and her story. And I think we all have a little Simran in us. And you certainly brought that out when I was writing in my diary while I was reading this book. And I also want to thank you for reminding us that being a tiger, it doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it just means refusing to disappear. And that's something that really resonated with me in the book. So thank you so much. I hope people go out and get Letters to Singapore. It's available, as Kelly had said in the beginning. There's repeat the bookstore again, the Owl.
There's Owl's Nest. There is, you can go to Good Old Chapters, but if you support the small bookstores, there's Shelf Life, there's Pages on Kensington, and definitely online if you want to get a Kindle version. Those are your options as well.
Lots of places to get the book.
Lots of places.
I love that. And for everyone listening, we always say these conversations that we have with our guests here, these are door openers on Middle Fingers Up. We're just scratching the surface, just starting these conversations. So if there's anything about this conversation that resonated with you or made you go, oh, what's that about? Reach out to Kelly, reach out to me. I want to hear it. I want to build off of these conversations with you. So Kelly, again, thank you so much. Any last comments? Anything else you want to say before we call it a day?
Few more things. One, if anyone has a book club and want to talk to me, let me know. We'll all meet at Kiran's house.
Yes, I'll supply the food.
Or anywhere else. And, in the spirit of my background and culture, I want to say Sat Sri Akal, Namaste, and yo, mama, go for it, man.
Yes, so well said. I love that.